At this point, three different kinds of questions may arise. 1. A problem so arranged that the answer will cover only the mental realm. For example, we can know which chain of logical ideas will lead to the solution of philosophical, mathematical, and like questions. In other words, we may lack a few components in our logical conclusions because of a failure of memory or uncertainty in the method of application. In this case, active concentration must give us a clear grasp of the components of the logical sequence which we already possess, plus a strong desire to obtain the remainder by way of meditation. Then, passive concentration comes as a form of rest after the active. But after this, the remainder of the missing links will come to fill the gaps, by means of the hard-to-explain, intellectual clairvoyance, or vision. I strongly recommend the student to try to understand well this method of using active and passive concentration by turn, so that he may follow the next questions without any difficulty. 2. On the question of astral character, I would like to say that at the moment of our passive concentration, we may get the answer in the form of geometrical or even musical symbols, usually as some lines on a dark background or as sounds. 3. As regards physical character, the answer to this comes under the heading of the illusion of sensations produced by things like feelings, odors, and flavors. In this case, the answer often comes during the very process of active concentration, or on the actual borderline of transition from the active to the passive, when, for example, you want to remember a perfume related to a certain name, or the taste of some food, or the impression on the surface of a tissue, and all these things belong to the physical plane. Among special applications of this last method, we may consider the so-called psychometry, as used in the waking state. Psychometry can also be based on mediumism and somnambulism. Contemporary occult science calls this sort of exercise the manifestation of the sixth, or odic, astral sense, which in our previous lessons was defined as astral imbibition or imagination. This is because all Hermetic authorities recommend that all persons practicing psychometry limit themselves to the bare minimum of susceptibility of their five physical senses. Some authors are of the opinion that the true key to psychometry is really just the ability for passive concentration. From personal experience, I am inclined to divide the responsibility for success equally between both types of concentration. If the active phase has not been well prepared, then some unwanted rubbish can slip through into the passive phase, which has not been sufficiently safeguarded by careful active preparation. Anyway, the whole process is as follows. Before the session, the psychometrist must concentrate actively on a strong desire to put his astrosome into contact with the row of objects placed before him. Here, I would again like to warn students. All the psychic and magic activities as expounded in this work are, according to Hermetic tradition, not accessible to anyone who merely condescends to read this book. It is necessary to have the abilities which have been discussed in the exposition of the major arcana, and for that reason, I am giving a lot of instruction on how to develop these abilities in general. It is by possessing them that you will be ready to experience what you are reading here theoretically. Of course, the best guarantee for complete success would be full preparation, and this can be found in a special study of the book Concentration. It has been impossible in a work of this nature, dedicated to so wide a subject as a presentation of the whole of the Western tradition of occultism, to give complete and detailed instruction on concentration, which needs a separate book in itself, as has just been mentioned. The desire of a psychometrist to enter into contact with the astrosomes of certain objects is by no means a fleeting one. It is a well-directed and skilled effort of willpower, which, for a while, enables him to exclude every other thought from his consciousness, so as to obtain the desired result. Now, our psychometrist has to use the articles he wants to psychometrize, or, in other words, to extract from them for his own purposes information about places, conditions, people, and so on with which the object has been in contact. The techniques are as follows. He takes the object one after another and presses them against his forehead, action of the otic centers in the brain, heart, or solar plexus. The choice depends upon where he is most sensitive and his kind of temperament. Only practical experience can teach him about it, but it is not such hard work by comparison with concentration itself. At the moment when the articles are close to the chosen point of his body, he quickly enters into the state of passive concentration, during which he can obtain the desired impressions in different ways, which can be optical, colored or not, sometimes acoustical, and on some occasions feelings, like impressions relating to the history of the formation of the object, its future fate, and stories about the persons who have been astrally or magnetically associated with it. About 25 years ago in Paris, I attended many seances arranged for the famous psychometrist, Stefan Osowicki. His ability was outstanding. He could invariably read and see persons merely by contact with their belongings, which had been given to him for experimental purposes. He would say where such and such a person was at that moment, and whether dead or alive, or what he was doing, and so on. He read letters without opening them, simply by putting them against his forehead for a short time. He could also see the human aura, and from it was able to forecast a sudden and approaching death for a particular person, which he always avoided doing by any means. Incidentally, he could not foresee his own death. If a psychometrist is given an envelope, he may be able to see the factory at which it was made, the contents of the enclosed letter, the figure and character of the person who wrote it, some of the important moments in his or her life, the office in which the letter was stamped, and so on. If the object presented to him is an ancient coin, the field of activity for an able psychometrist is very wide, and he may see interesting historical cliches, while an old shell or piece of ore may yield geological ones. The time for passive concentration on one object should not be longer than 5 minutes. But if the article begins to give further interesting cliches, the seance may be prolonged to 20 or 30 minutes because of their scientific importance. Here, I must mention that sometimes the historical cliches may appear in reversed chronological order, which must be taken into account by the operator. To a certain extent, he must also be acquainted with the general theme of the expected cliches. In other words, it should be possible for the historical ones, for example, to be interpreted by a historian who may be able to correct any errors in time, which arise from the reversed visions. Apart from the basic preparation, concentration exercises, for a person not endowed with the psychometric abilities from birth, a general outline may be given as follows. Take 7 plain envelopes containing letters from persons known to the operator, and try to find which came from which person. Take 4 bags with different minerals and try to find out which mineral is in which bag. Another type of interesting experience, possibly only for a very sensitive and highly trained psychometrist, is the diagnosis of a sickness of a patient's internal organs. Usually, one of the patient's little fingers is placed in the psychometrist's ear, as this is sufficient to allow him to describe the state of the organs exactly. The so-called visions of the auras of human beings and objects, that is, the astral emanations, also belong to the results of both kinds of concentration, active and passive, when used in these proceedings. Colors and colored forms are seen, and if the operator knows their meaning, he may be able to reveal plenty of important facts. Some people can see the aura even without closing their eyes. In this case, the ability may be associated with an extraordinary development of the subtle physical sight. But usually, auras are seen with the eyes closed, and therefore, by means of the sixth sense, as Hermetists like to express it.